Hey guys, just wanted to clarify something when I put out my last video where I said that Pope Francis was not a Vatican II Pope. What I mean by that is that Pope Francis is something, he's supra Vatican II. He's something he's the next step of evolution in the church, which is a scary thought. He's a product of Vatican II, but he's not a hardline Vatican II Pope. What I mean by that is he doesn't necessarily have the same views of the popes of the time that Vatican II was written. He doesn't think that there is an eternal truth inside of the liturgy. He doesn't believe that our morality cannot be changed. He does not believe that mercy is subordinate to justice. And while these things, if you look at Vatican II, you might think that, well, you would say that, well, Vatican II popes didn't believe that either, which that's false. If you look through the Vatican II documents, the actual notes on the conference, they really didn't change too much. They did and they didn't. It was a sort of an evangelical council. It was a way to help minister to third world countries in a postmodern world where communism was spreading like a plague, and they had to do something. And which it's not necessarily wrong. I don't think it's wrong at all to sit and say that different cultures will express the faith differently. You can see this in the church already, and it's been there for thousands of years. Like with the Byzantine Rite, the Eastern rites. These are just different ways of manifesting the same truth on earth. The Mass is the Mass. The words of the liturgy might change, the way you move your hands might change, but the Mass is the Mass. And this is very true. And Vatican II seemed to want to take that truth, like the Byzantine Rite, and they went a different direction than they should have, in my opinion. They seem to say that we want a universal liturgy that all people can help. They can help serve the church with by attending, and this liturgy is the Novus Ordo liturgy. And while it's an effort to help other cultures understand and participate in the Mass more, it was written for the modernist. It was written in a bad way, where we sacrifice reverence for our entertainment, it seems, and we also want to homogenize the entire world into one liturgy, which both of those things are terrible, I would believe. When on their own, but when you combine them, it's pretty gnarly, and we can see this today with liturgical dancers and all sorts of things. But the liturgy is not supposed to be something that is mutable, like the Vatican II proponents would say. And Vatican II itself didn't really change anything. It just said that we're going to try evangelizing in a different way. The real change was in the conference on the liturgy, which I can talk about in another video, and the guys behind that who set down the new liturgy. They laid it all out. They laid it all out how it should be done, the translation, what happens in it. That was not part of Vatican II. That happened after Vatican II. The changes to the actual liturgy. But what needs to be understood here is that Pope Francis is not a Vatican II Pope, because the Vatican II popes would say that the liturgy is, like I said before, it's something important. It shouldn't be something we play with. It should be a reverent thing, and we just need to change it up a little bit for the modern times for new people to understand, which in itself I don't agree with, because it shouldn't need to be changed. But they at least understood that certain parts of the Mass are holy, where heaven and earth touch, where the Eucharist turns into the body and blood, the divinity of Christ, the perfect sacrifice. These things were still recognized. Now, Pope Francis, on the other hand, he doesn't necessarily agree with this at all. And we can see this where, in the article I read a few years back, where Pope Francis has stated that he is pushing for an option for each individual diocese to accept different translations of liturgy and sacred scripture. So what he's saying in effect is he's pushing Vatican II past what it was. This is something new. You can see this with Amoris Laetitia, where he doesn't even cover it up, where he's attempting to change actual church doctrine on his own via an encyclical. So it's not like everybody met and said, "Hey, can divorced people, can they take the Eucharist? Is divorce still a terrible thing?" He didn't do that. He didn't get all of his buddies together and talk about it. He just stated it, and he did it during the Jubilee Year of Mercy, if you recall, to try and hide it, saying, well, for this year, divorced or remarried couples, they get a dispensation where they are no longer they can accept the Eucharist, they can take it without committing a mortal sin, even though they're in a state of adultery. That's what he said. And it's I don't know how I feel about that during a Jubilee year like that. But the problem is he extended it. He said that perpetually, as long as he's around, you can be divorced, remarried, which makes you an adulterer because marriage is until death do us part. So unless your spouse died or something, of course. So if you get a divorce, you get remarried, and you engage in the marital act, which is what the purpose of marriage is, you are a adulterer, and that's a simple fact. And when you are in a state of mortal sin, you cannot take the Eucharist without committing sacrilege. So what he's done is he's tried to change the framework that the church operates in. So he's got two moves. He can either say that being divorced and remarried is no longer a sin, or he can say that you can take the Eucharist in a state of mortal sin. And both of those are terrible, but the one that he seems to be pushing for is that you can take the Eucharist in a state of mortal sin because of God's mercy. And that alone is something that this is not Catholicism as we know it. This is something new. And I fear that Pope Francis will be something, he'll start something new. He'll have the Vatican III Council, and God knows what that'll look like. Some sort of ecumenical mess. And it's not going to be good. Again, Pope Francis is something new. He's not like JP2. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. When you think of Vatican II popes, most, if you ask someone in the Society of St. Pius X, they're going to say JP2, Benedict. Then Francis he's not in the same league. He's something different, and we have to accept that. We can't just say that Vatican II did this. Vatican II is what's wrong with the church right now, because this is something new. Vatican II is bad. It hurt the church more than it helped. I will not dispute that fact. But Pope Francis is something beyond it.